Vekoma is currently one of the leading roller coaster manufacturers in the industry, with major coasters such as F.L.Y at Phantasialand and Force at Emerald Park in their portfolio, and even more such as Siren's Curse at Cedar Point set to open in the future. When a theme park buys a Vekoma coaster, it is guaranteed to be smooth, reliable, and have a good, enjoyable layout. It hasn't always been this way though. Vekoma was once notorious for its lack of quality and rough rides, and many of these still drag down the overall views of Vekoma to this day. In this video, we'll be exploring Vekoma's history as a company, as well as how they managed to make a comeback from being considered one of the worst coaster manufacturers to one of the best. Vekoma was founded in the Netherlands in 1926 by Hendrik op het Veld, not as a ride manufacturer but as a farming equipment manufacturer. The company went through several changes over the years, from producing steel for the mining industry to producing it for the petrochemical industry. However, Vekoma would change forever in the 1970s when they were offered a groundbreaking deal. Arrow Development, a roller coaster manufacturer responsible for some of the most popular steel roller coasters in the world at the time, such as the Matterhorn bobsleds at Disneyland, contracted Vekoma to produce the steel for their roller coasters in Europe. Those at Vekoma didn't know it at the time, but this would be the most pivotal moment in the company's expansion. Arrow taught Vekoma everything they needed to know about creating the company's signature tubular track, and soon they had even licensed their coaster building technology. Vekoma now had the knowledge and resources to branch off and enter the market on their own in 1979 under the new name Vekoma Rides Manufacturing BV. Vekoma's first roller coaster was called Super Whirlpool and opened at Holiday Park in Germany in 1979. The ride featured a double corkscrew element, much like Arrow's designs, and also featured Arrow's trains, which was part of Vekoma and Arrow's licensing deal. As you can tell from this POV, the ride was pretty janky and not the smoothest, but it was Vekoma's first. Vekoma went on to produce more of these classic sit-down double corkscrew coasters, some cloned, some custom. They started to pop up all over Europe, from Alton Towers in the UK to Efteling in the Netherlands. All of these coasters were pretty similar to Arrow's corkscrew design, with Vekoma's only real innovation in terms of coaster technology up to this point being making some of their rides a little more compact and portable. Vekoma's first real innovation came in 1982 with their first ever boomerang coaster, imaginatively named Boomerang. This changed Vekoma's path in multiple ways. Firstly, whilst Vekoma had previously been using what were basically Arrow's designs for their coasters, Boomerang was different and new. If you're familiar with roller coasters, I'm sure you've encountered pictures or videos of these before, or even ridden one yourself. The model is very simple, featuring just two elements, a vertical loop and a cobra roll. What made the Boomerang so innovative was that it took riders both forwards and backwards during its course by using two lift hills, one using a catch car to pull trains to the top backwards before releasing them forwards, and one using a chain to pull trains forwards to the top before releasing them backwards to do the ride's elements once more. To say the Boomerang was successful would be an understatement. Vekoma's new compact, thrilling and crowd-pleasing ride model was perfect for parks, and nearly 20 of them had opened before the turn of the new decade, and today, over 50 Boomerangs have opened all over the world. This proved to Vekoma that innovating and making their own new coaster models would prove successful, so this was what they did. Producing family coasters, indoor coasters and custom looping coasters, Vekoma had found its place in the ride manufacturing industry. They even manufactured the theme park giant Disney's iconic Big Thunder Mountain for Disneyland Paris in 1992, throwing them completely into the spotlight. Vekoma would experience its second big success in 1994, when they introduced another extremely popular new ride model, the suspended looping coaster. 2 years prior, in 1992, Bolliger & Mabillard, another coaster manufacturer, had debuted their brand new inverted coaster model with Batman the Ride at Six Flags Great America. The idea of the ride model was to hang riders beneath the track and send them through inversions, a feat that at the time hadn't been seen before and was a pretty neat gimmick. However, B&M's coasters were, and still are, very expensive additions, so for small parks, buying an inverted coaster wasn't really an option. Vekoma saw this as an opportunity to produce an affordable alternative to B&M's inverted coaster, naming it the Suspended Looping Coaster, or SLC for short. This model's first installation was Condor at Wallaby Holland and featured the same track design as other Vekoma and Arrow coasters, yet this time it was upside down. Beneath it hung two across suspended trains with bulky over-the-shoulder restraints. Condor's layout featured some interesting elements, such as a rollover and double inline twist, which became iconic for this model. Much like the Boomerang, Vekoma sold loads of SLCs, with 8 of them opening in the year 1995 alone. This was another huge success for Vekoma. That being said, there was a large difference between Vekoma and B&M's takes on the concept. B&M's inverted coasters were incredibly smooth, whereas Vekoma SLCs were very rough and uncomfortable. The profiling, train design and bulky restraints made SLCs cause a lot of headbanging, meaning they weren't particularly enjoyable for guests. This problem was also prevalent on most of Vekoma's coasters at the time, and when new, smoother roller coasters started appearing, Vekoma's quality was somewhat falling behind. This falling public perception, especially in the coaster enthusiast community, didn't stop Vekoma though. In 1995, they worked with Disneyland Paris to create Space Mountain from the Earth to the Moon, now known as Hyperspace Mountain. This was the world's first full-circuit launch coaster, yet another huge achievement for the company. Vekoma had built a fantastic relationship with Disney, who would continue purchasing their roller coasters to this day. This was fantastic for Vekoma, since Disney was such a behemoth in the theme park industry that their rides were on show to millions of people and many potential buyers. Vekoma continued to supply thrill and family coasters to parks all over the world throughout the rest of the 90s, but many, especially their thrill rides, were slowly growing a bit of a bad reputation for their roughness, especially SLCs and Boomerangs, their 2 flagship models. This somewhat overshadowed their immense innovation. On the 1st of April in the year 2000, Vekoma opened their first flying coaster, Stealth at California's Great America. This version of the flying coaster started with riders sitting upright above the track, before being tilted onto their back and descending up the lift hill. At the top, riders would flip onto their front and traverse the course in the flying position. This was a huge innovation, and actually opened 2 years before B&M's first flying coaster, Air, opened to the public. However, as mentioned previously, this was overshadowed by the ride's roughness. Like other Vekoma coasters, Stealth, later known as Nighthawk after being relocated, was often berated for its roughness, though it definitely had its fans, RIP Nighthawk. The start of the new millennium wasn't all innovation for Vekoma though. In August 2001, Vekoma officially declared bankruptcy. The director of Vekoma at the time, Robert Houben, said it was caused by a decline in amusement park attendance and an overall decrease in sales. Additionally, various roller coasters had experienced technical issues, such as Batwing and Deja Vu, and therefore there had been a lack of payment from Six Flags for these coasters. The company had to lay off about 240 employees and gather a team of 15 to try and help reorganise. This was no doubt a low point for the company, but they soon managed to reorganise and the company returned in full swing, continuing to produce roller coasters. In 2002, Vekoma created another revolutionary new concept, the Tilt Coaster. In the form of Gravity Max at Discovery World in Taiwan, The tilt coaster was incredible technology, especially for the time. After ascending the lift hill, trains would make their way onto the tilt track, which slowly lowered until it connected with a vertical drop below. The train was then released and could traverse the rest of the layout. This may seem like a huge win for Vekoma, but Gravity Max was the only tilt coaster they sold, at least for around 20 years, but we'll get to that later. Despite this, Vekoma continued to produce its roller coasters, and slowly something began to be noticed by theme park enthusiasts. Vekomas were getting smoother, albeit incrementally. Whilst Vekoma's roller coasters were still certainly not the pinnacle of smoothness, especially their SLCs, some of their rides started to seem similar in smoothness to those of other manufacturers. Vekoma was starting to catch up. In 2006, Vekoma formed an alliance with the US-based roller coaster manufacturer Chance Morgan. Chance would manufacture the steel for Vekoma's US projects, which is somewhat ironic, seeing as it was this sort of agreement which first entered Vekoma into the theme park industry way back in the 70s. Vekoma was now in a very good place, producing roller coasters for Disney, innovating new technology, and slowly but surely improving its reputation. Its new track design was helping too, starting on family coasters but later spreading to some of Vekoma's thrill coasters. The new track design was a vast improvement on the one they borrowed from Arrow. Instead of having its side friction wheels on the inside of the track, they rested on the outside, and the track was overall better suited to being smoother. This was one of the signs for the future major improvements in the manufacturer's quality, but this increase was still happening slowly. However, as the 2010s approached, Vekoma's comeback started to become much more apparent. In 2011, they opened the first of a new ride type, Ben 10 Ultimate Mission at Drayton Manor. This was the first family boomerang, a less intense version of their popular boomerang model. Using their new track design, the ride was much smoother, and though Vekoma had slowly been edging towards smoothness for the last decade, it was around this time that parks started to notice. Family boomerangs became incredibly popular throughout Europe, and have just started recently finding their way into the US. In fact, this ride model was so popular that Energylandia in Poland has two. Vekoma was truly making a comeback, and entering the sphere of a quality manufacturer that it had been left out of for so long. Motorbike coasters, family boomerangs, suspended family coasters, Vekoma was going all out in the family market, with hit after hit. This was their main focus for the first half of the 2010s, churning out smooth, reliable and fun family coasters. This was shocking. For the last several decades, Vekoma had been the focus of many jokes. Its rides were known to be rough, janky and uncomfortable, so this was a huge turnaround for them. That being said, Vekoma was still yet to truly prove itself in the thrill industry. Manufacturers like Intamin and Mack were exploring new and exciting ways to make dynamic, flowing layouts for their coasters, and greatly succeeding. Intamin's Blitz model, with rides such as Maverick and Cheetah Hunt, was proving very successful, and it seemed that this was the new direction roller coasters were taking. Rather than focusing on cookie-cutter elements and back-to-back inversions, new coasters were focusing more on ejector airtime and whippy transitions with smooth, flowing layouts, and Vekoma wanted to get in on the action. In 2016, Energylandia unveiled Formula, the first of a new form of Vekoma's LSM launch model. Formula was smooth, Formula was whippy, Formula was a good ride. With new-gen track, trains, profiling and layout design, Vekoma wanted to prove that they had broken out of the stereotypes that had previously plagued the company. No more over-the-shoulder restraints, no more unbearable roughness, and no more classic cookie-cutter layouts. And it worked. Parks saw the good work that Vekoma was doing and started purchasing their exciting new-gen thrill coasters. Vekoma went on to sell more of these whippy and intense sit-down coasters, such as Let Coaster in 2017 and Phoenix in 2022. But it wasn't just sit-down coasters that Vekoma manufactured in this new modern version of the company. They went and revisited some of their older, more popular ride models in order to expand upon them and improve them by making them smoother and more interesting. For example, in June 2020, Vekoma opened their first suspended thrill coaster, Hausuber Kopf. In an attempt to revive the SLC for the modern era of roller coasters, the STC featured similar characteristics to its older counterpart, such as a two-across suspended train, but also featured lap bars and Vekoma's modern track to give the model a new lease of life. Unlike SLCs, Hausuber Kopf was perfectly smooth, and with no over-the-shoulder restraints, it was impossible to bang your head. Additionally, the layout was much more interesting than the SLC's layouts. Hausuber Kopf featured flowing inversions, whippy transitions, and even pops of airtime, which is pretty unusual for a suspended coaster. For these reasons, Hausuber Kopf was a big success with the general public and theme park enthusiasts alike. And since then, one other STC has opened in the form of Nafina Force at Emerald Park. Another ride model that Vekoma revived in 2020 was its flying coaster. With their previous flying coasters being uncomfortable and often having low throughputs, Vekoma wanted to create a new version that was smooth, high capacity and innovative. This was achieved with F.L.Y at Phantasialand. Besides having breathtaking theming built by Phantasialand, the ride system is fantastic as well. Instead of loading above the track and being tilted back into the lying position like the previous versions, F.L.Y loads from the side of the track, and both the track and the trains tilt at the same time, so the riders are left in the flying position. Also, F.L.Y was the first flying coaster to feature launches, and this means that the coaster keeps its speed and has a fantastic, elegant layout that weaves over and under itself. This was yet another hit for Vekoma, and though we still haven't seen another one of these built, I'm sure we will do in the coming years. Now Vekoma had revived their SLC, sit-down and flying coaster, it was time for them to modernise their other hugely popular ride model from the 80s, the Boomerang. Opening in 2023, Cloud Shuttle at Fantaworld Wonderland in China was the first iteration of the Super Boomerang, featuring launches, vertical spikes and two inversions taken both forwards and backwards, as well as featuring Vekoma's new gen trains. This was a big improvement on the rough, janky boomerangs that dominated the 80s and 90s. With another of these opening in the form of Flash Vertical Velocity later this year, it's safe to say that Vekoma's revival of popular concepts from their past is working in their favour. Vekoma is now viewed as no longer rough or low quality, but as one of the leading coaster manufacturers, and with its newer, whippier and more exciting modern layouts, some even prefer it to huge company Bolliger and Mabiard, whose layouts haven't evolved much since the early 2000s. As we look to the future, Vekoma is seeking to improve and expand its offering even further, the most exciting of its future additions being the revival of the Tilt Coaster. 23 years after the addition of Gravity Max, 3 brand new tilt coasters are opening this year: Circuit Breaker at Coasterland, Siren's Curse at Cedar Point and Iron Rattler at Six Flags Qiddiya. I can definitely see this model becoming a competitor to B&M's Dive Coaster, especially since its signature tilt feature and more dynamic layout may be more appealing to parks and guests. It will be interesting to see how these coasters will be received, but if they're anything like Vekoma's other thrill coasters from the last decade or so, I think we're in for a treat. Looking back, it's insane to see how far Vekoma has come in the last 50 years. From simply producing the steel for Arrow's European coasters, to branching off and becoming their own innovative company, to making a huge comeback in 2016 with smooth and dynamic new coasters popping up all over the world, it's safe to say that Vekoma's history was quite the roller coaster. Thank you for making it to the end of this video. If you enjoyed this mini documentary, I'd appreciate it if you liked the video and subscribe to the channel for more theme park and roller coaster related content coming soon. Take care, and goodbye.